All right. Today I want to talk to you about why inclusive education is so important. Most of us have kids. I want you to think for a minute that you're speaking with the school, the principal, a teacher, and they're telling you that your child does not have the capabilities to learn in a normal classroom. They're not going to thrive. They're not going to prosper. And then what do? They say, well, we put them in a life skills class. A life skills class is just what it says. It teaches them things that they'll need to survive in the future. It teaches them how to grocery shop using count change, but it doesn't give them an education. According to Friend, before 1975, an estimate of 4 million children with disabilities in the United States did not receive the necessary support for a proper education. Another 1 million didn't receive any schooling at all. It wasn't until what is now referred to as the IDEA Act, the Individuals with Disability Education, that gave them the opportunity to be evaluated by a clinical psychologist, gave them a label, and determined a placement or an input for their education. Inclusive education plays an important role in the equality of educational standards for all students and is paving the way for their success. During this speech, I want to discuss what an inclusive education is, what are some of the benefits, and I want to share with you a story of victory through inclusion. When someone is truly included, no one will question their presence, only their absence. Renee LaPointe. Whoops. Sorry. What is an inclusive education? This kind of gives you a visual. You have exclusion where your children with disabilities, no matter how severe, are on the outside. Segregation where they're completely in another spot. And then you have integration where they bring them in small groups, but they're not really included. And then at the top shows inclusion. Inclusion is founded on the social justice principles in which students are presumed competent and welcome valued members of their general education classes and extracurricular activities. Participating and learning alongside the same age peers in general education instruction based on their general curriculum and experiencing meaningful social relationships. Basically, what this is they're trying to give these children the opportunity to interact not only with children with disabilities like themselves, but getting them to interact with society in a sense. Inclusion is made possible with the help of an IEP. An IEP is an individual education plan. And an IEP is basically an outline that is compiled with the student's strengths and weaknesses, and then is used to create goals for the child's educational progress. IEPs give students the access to accommodations so that they can participate in a normal classroom environment. IEPs help to create an equal playing field in learning. This is not working for me today. Now let's focus on the benefits of inclusion. An inclusive education allows students to develop individual strengths and gifts with appropriate expectations for each student. What this means is you're giving children, not only children with disabilities, but also neurotypical or normal children, the abilities to develop gifts that they would not naturally have. And you're also giving them the opportunity to expand their horizon, is I guess the best word I can use. They can work on individual goals while still participating in the life of the classroom with their peers. It fosters a school culture of respect and belonging. By including these children, they don't seem like outsiders, the weird kid. They feel more part of a whole, and that's important. Nobody likes to be the outsider. Inclusive education provides opportunities to learn about and accept individual differences, lessening the impact of harassment and bullying. Again, that kind of goes with learning how to accept somebody for who they are, not why they can't do something or why they are the way they are. And they can develop friendships with a wide variety of other children, each with their own individual needs and abilities. And that gives them something to, somebody might be in a wheelchair, but they like baseball. Well, that gives them the opportunity to interact with another kid who likes baseball and can play baseball, but they can kind of talk back and forth. I wanted to share with you a story that has proven that success is possible with inclusion. And this is called Casey's Ooh La La success story. Casey is a student with Down syndrome and has been attending a life skills class for 6 years. She was being transitioned into an inclusive classroom now that she was entering high school. They had decided that Katie would take a French class. The school only had a spot in French 2, where only French is spoken. With no expectation of her being fluent, they thought this was an acceptable placement. After only 8 days in French 2, the French teacher was extremely distressed. Casey was having no socialization, which goes against what they're trying to do inclusion. Most of them believe that they're there for socialization rather than education, which is not the case. Casey was removed from French 2 and will be placed in French 1 next semester. Casey missed her French class and wanted to go back desperately. With an email, Casey earned her spot in French. Casey attended 8 French 2 classes. She brought home 70 flashcards, and she could interpret and pronounce 36 of those. She could read. She knew what 8 of them meant and attempted to pronounce. At this point, socialization was not the goal. Casey was learning French and learning to love it. In spite of her concerns, Mrs. X, the French teacher, must be doing a great job because Casey has already achieved more than we had ever expected. In conclusion, we have come to see that inclusion develops the mind, expands knowledge, teaches acceptance, and builds positive social relationships. In short, inclusion breeds success. I wanted to leave you with one final thought that I think truly reflects the value and importance of an inclusive education. Benjamin Franklin said, "Tell me and I'll forget. Teach me and I'll remember. Involve me and I'll learn."